Hi, and welcome to this video on FastAPI dashboard development. So in this video, we're going to make this dashboard, which goes into a directory in your file system, and then we'll pull in how much size that directory is currently utilizing, give some stats on the extensions that are using up most of the memory within that directory and subdirectories, and then finally giving some bad actor list of the worst offending files in that directory. The reason for doing this project is because there's a lot of popular dashboarding libraries in Python, such as Dash and Streamlit. But sometimes if you're wanting to make a dashboard that's going to have more involved backends, you may want to use a framework such as FastAPI or Flask or Django. So in this tutorial, we're just going to go and show you how to set that up. And while we're at it, might as well make an application that's somewhat useful. So this will allow you to profile the memory usage in your directories. So yeah, let's get in and let's get started. So to begin, let's create a new directory. I'm going to call it memory app. And then we're going to want to go and install a virtual environment. So we'll do Python 3 since I'm on a Linux environment, dash m will be v, and then we want to call this our virtual environment. And then once we have our virtual environment set up, let's go and activate it. So we'll say source vnv bin activate it to activate that shell script. It'll run the shell script, and now we're in our virtual environment. So now we'll want to go install a few packages. So we're going to do pip install FastAPI. We'll do Pathlib, and then we'll also do Pandas. And then after we have our dependency saws, let's create a new file. We're going to call it app.py. And then let's open up our editor of choice. In this case, I'll use NeoVim. Let's go to our app.py. And then we're going to go and copy and paste the starter code for FastAPI, copy it, go over here, and we'll copy that in. We'll save that here. And then we'll go and start our FastAPI server. So I'm going to go into that directory, open up a new terminal here. And then after we have that activated to start our FastAPI server, we'll just type FastAPI development dev, and then the name of our app, which is going to be app.py. And we need to install pip install FastAPI standard to install the WSGI app. So we'll do that. And then we'll go through and do it again. And then you should see we get it running. So that's how we get our FastAPI started. So we're going to go into our app.py file here. And the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to import OS. And this is going to allow us to go through our operating system and get through all the files in the current directory and pull in the information such as the extension and the file size, which we need for our dashboard. And so we're going to create a new function here. It's going to be called, we're going to call this get the stats. And it's going to take takes one argument, which is going to be directory of type string. And then on this, we're actually not going to return anything, so we'll put a return type of none. And then we're going to say we want to use the global data. And the reason we're doing global data is because we don't have a persistent database on this application, so we're just using a global state, which typically you don't want to use here. So we'll say global data to reference to the data, and then we're going to wipe clear the current data state if there is any. So after that, we're going to want to go through and walk through the directory. So we're going to use a method called osWalk, which is going to feed us the current directory that we're in, all the subdirectories of the current directory, and all the files inside the directory inside of a tuple. So it's going to look something like this. So what this method does is it returns a tuple of the current directory, a list of the subdirectories, and a list of all the files, and it does that for every single directory, starting on your on the current directory, and then recursively goes down. So this is going to allow us to basically recursively go through our directory here and pull all the information that we need. So once we have that, we want to go through here, and then we want to go through all the files. So we'll say for file and files. And then on this, we want to go through and create the full file path for this. So this is just going to give us the last part of the file, but we want to get the full file path. So we'll say, we'll override the file and say it's equal to os.path.join. And we want to give it the current directory that we're in and the file. So this will give us the full file path. And then on there, we first want to check if it's not a symbolic link, since that doesn't, we really don't care about the size if it's a symbolic link. So this os.path.isLink will let us know if it's a symbolic link. So if it's a symbolic link, we'll just pass over it. And then finally, we want to append to our data. We want to give it the file. So this will be the path that we have, os.path, and then we want to get the size of the file. And then we also want to put in the suffix. So to get the suffix, it's actually a little bit easier just to use pathlib. So I'm going to import pathlib. So we'll say from pathlib import path. And we're going to go here and say path, the file, and then we're going to get the suffix. And we want to only get the up to the last one. Okay, so that should be all that we need to do here. And so now we just need to change our path. So I'm going to create a new path. So we're going to call this path get/read stats. And it's going to take one argument. The argument that's going to take is the directory. And it's going to be of type string or none. Actually, it'll be string, and the default is just going to be our /home/ my username is Chase. In your application, you want to put this to your home directory, and then I'm just going to put this under my projects. So by default, if we don't pass anything, it's going to take that. And so then we'll just need to return a, well, for now we'll just return a JSON, so we'll run this getStats function, getStats, and we'll run that with our directory. And then we'll just return, we'll want to return a data structure here. So we'll just say this will be the data. And then on here, we'll just give it our data. Just to check to make sure this is working. So now let's go to our web browser and let's go to our dashboard here. And I'll go to the /docs. And we want to go to the read stats. And let's just try it out and execute it. And we got a 500 error code, so let's see what we did wrong here. And I misspelled this here. This is supposed to be directory. And let's try that again. And so one last thing, actually we don't want to return all of our data here, just because this is actually a pretty big data structure. So we'll just return done for now, just so we can see that it finished. And we'll just assume it worked. So we'll go back here and try that out. And it takes a little bit to run through the directories. It takes a few seconds. And then we can see we get back done. So it looks like we, at least for now, this is working correctly. So we'll move on to the next portion here. So the next thing that we're going to do is whenever we log onto the page on the left side of the dashboard, we want to have all the current directory, the parent directory, and all the subdirectories of the current directory that we're in so that we can navigate through our dashboard. So let's go through on this read stats, and what we're going to do is just pull in those directories. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to call the dirs, and this is going to be equal to this. So what this does right here is basically we're going to go through the current directory that we're in and then iterate through all of its subdirectories. And then we'll basically say, okay, if that particular file is a directory, then we'll add it to this list and we want to get the string of it. So that will be our directories. So we're going to add that to our context. So our context, this is going to be our subdirectories. And then we're going to also add our current and our parent directory. And for the parent directory, we'll first do the Pathlib directory, and then we'll get the parent, and then we'll wrap this up into a string, and then we'll just return the context for now. And let's go back to our application and see if we can run this. And we got an error, so let's see what we did wrong here. And this is supposed to be iter dir, not iter dirs. And let's try that again. And we get our response back, and from here we can see all of our directories, the current directory, and then we get the parent directory in our context. So that's what we want. So now let's go and start making a template response for this. So for our template response, we're going to need to import a few things here. And I think we need to install Jinja 2 because the linting's not working here. So let's do a pip install Jinja 2. Okay, now let's go back. And we'll go to our app. And this is supposed to be Jinja 2 templates. So this will be templates will be equal to Jinja 2 templates. And we want to give it the directory that we want. So it's going to be this could be the directory. And then now we want to go through and return a template response. So we'll say and then on this, we'll actually need to add our response as an object as well. So let's go back here and say from FastAPI.responses import, request, not response, request, import request. And then let's go back into our response here. And we need to say read stats. We want to import the request. And so then once we have our request, we can return our template response, pass it in the request, and then we're going to call this the dashboard main.html is what we're going to call here. And then we'll give it the context. And then we'll delete this here. And it should be request without the S. And we don't need this auto imported right here. Okay, and so now we just need to go and create a new file. So let's create a new directory. We're going to call it templates. And then, whoops, and we didn't mean to add it into our virtual environment. So we'll go down here, add a new directory called templates. And then on here, we're going to add a new file. And we said this file is going to be called our dashboard main.html. So let's open up our dashboard main.html. And then on here, what do we want to do for now? We want to just kind of show that list of directories. So we'll do a list here. So do a unordered list. And then we'll do the first list element. The first one is just going to be our, we'll go into our context and we'll say our parent directory. We'll do another list element. This one is going to be called our current directory. And then finally, we want to do a for loop. And then on this, we're just going to do an element. And we're just going to put out the dir. And then we'll end the for. And for. And that should be all we need on our template. So let's go back to our app. And I think that's all we need to do. Let's see if we can go to, let's see, read, let's see what we call this, read stats. And give it a minute here to run and see if it renders our template. And let's see, what did we do wrong here? Template not found, dashboard.main.html. So I misspelled dashboard on right here. And so now we can see we get the list of all the directories here. So that's the first thing we needed to get on our template. So the next thing, we'll go through and start adding some CSS. So let's do that next. So for our CSS, we're actually just going to install TailWindCSS. So let's go into TailWindCSS. And let's go to the Get Started page here. And we're just going to follow the instructions here. So to install it, we need to have npm on your computer. I'm assuming you already have that installed. If not, go ahead and install npm. So let's go here to our project, and let's go and paste this in here. Okay, and then we installed it. Okay, and I had to fix a vulnerability apparently. And let's go through, and on our Tailwind config, we need to change this here. So let's go into our Vim, and let's go into our Tailwind config. And on here, we're actually just going to put the context within the template directory. So we're going to say the context is within the templates / .html. And I think that's how we can specify that. If I'm, yeah, start at HTML. And then, so we can get out of this again. And then we need to go into our, create a file called input.css. And so actually, instead of under the src like they recommend, we're going to add a new folder called static. And then we're going to add that input.css on our static file there. And then let's just go and add that in. And then finally, they're going to recommend that we run this right here. So let's copy this. And I'm going to actually run this in another terminal. So let's go back. Let's go back into our project. And then let's run that command that they recommend. Except here we're going to change up our folders that we're pointing at. So these, instead of the src, we're going to point to static. And instead of here, we're going to point to static. And we'll run that, and it looks like it's running. So now we actually need to go through and import our style sheet. So actually, I'm going to go and just create a new template called the base. So go on here. And we're going to add a new file called base.html. So this will be our base. And so let's just do our emit here. And then on our here, we're going to put a link equal to static/output.css is what our style sheet, and our type is equal to style sheet. And this should be, sorry, relative style sheet. And so now we actually need to go through, and on our app, let's just go and for now we'll just do body will be we'll just do include our dashboard.main.html, and then we'll need to wrap this inside of quotation marks. And then let's go back to our app. And then on here, let's actually just make it import, point to our base.html. In order for it to show up, we need to add static. So we'll say from FastAPI.static files import static. So we'll need to import static files, and then we'll need to mount it like so. So let's just go through and import from static And now let's refresh this and see if we can get the CSS to pop up. And so now we can see that we're getting the styling changed, so that confirms that we're now getting Tailwind CSS to show up. So that's how we can add Tailwind to our FastAPI project. So now we can begin styling our application. Okay, so to begin styling our templates, we're first going to put a new class to put a grid spec for our overall layout. So let's do that real quick. Okay, so this will put the grid spec in. And then next thing we want to do is let's go through and wrap this into a new template. So I'm going to create a new template called listers on here. And so then we'll say include listers.html. And then let's go back to our listers. So in here, we're going to wrap this again into a div. And then let's give it a title here. And we'll center the text and make it large. And the title is going to be the directories. And then for our unordered list, let's give it a few classes as well. So we're going to do a few things. Let's go and we want to change the border to be, the background to be a little bit darker. And then we also want to give it a border on the right-hand side to kind of distinguish it from the actual dashboard that we're going to have. And then for our list elements, we want to also create these to have a few different classes here. So let's do this here. So for these, we want to basically, when we hover over it, we want it to kind of change the color so that our users know that it's clickable. And then we'll change the hover to be a cursor pointer. And then we also want to give it a little bit of padding. And so for this S element, we also want to do very similar, except on here, we also want to add a little bit of margin on the left side. So we'll do margin left -4, so that we know that it's a subdirectory of this, the one above it. And then again, on the last LIs, we'll do similar, except on here, we want to give it a margin of 8 on the left. And so now let's go back and see if we get some better styling on our page. And so now you can see this little navigation. It looks a little bit better now. Of course, right now when we click on it, nothing happens, but we'll fix that here in a minute. So that's how we can start getting the styling going. And so next thing we're going to start doing is introduce HTMX so that we can select on these elements and actually start working with those. So we'll do that next. So to add HTMX into our project, we can just go to the HTMX website and we'll go here. And then on the getting started, we should see on here. So if we go into the docs, they'll show us how to get this started right here. So they recommend doing a CDN, but actually what I'm going to do is just add that into our static directory since we already have it. So if we go here and just copy this, and then let's go back into our project, and we're just going to go into our static directory, and then we're just going to get the CDN website. And so now you can see we have a file here called htmx.org. And so let's just rename that to htmx.org02, and I'm just going to call this htmx.js. And now let's go back to our Vim. And we're just going to go back to our templates and go out to our base. And then on here, on the here, we're just going to say script. We're going to say script src is equal to /static/htmx.js. And so this will allow us to import our HTMX into our application. And so now we should be able to go back to our elements here. So now on here, whenever we click on the elements, what we want to do is do another, go back into our read file. So we'll do hx-get so that we know it's a get method. And we're going to go to the read So we're going to do read stats. That'll be our get method. And then what we want to target is going to be, we want that to be our hashtag dashboard. So we'll need to go back to our base here, and we want to basically change the our dashboard right here. So we want this to be what we want to replace it here, this whole part here. So we say this is ID of dashboard, so that we know we how to target this. And then now if we go back to here, the last thing we want to do is we should replace the whole thing. So we're just going to say hx-swap is going to be equal to outer, replace it with outer HTML. And then we want to also put in hx-vals to give it the query parameter. So I want to go through here and add that to each of our LIs. And actually on this one right here, this shouldn't have been the parent, should have been the current dir. And then on this one, we also want this to be the just dir. And so now if we go back to our page and let's refresh this. And then if we click on one of these, this should bring up a new page. And on here, it looks like we forgot to close off our hx-vals with the proper JSON. So now let's go back and try that again. And then now we can see we're able to kind of navigate our directories here. And so now we're able to navigate directories here. So now finally to get to the crux of the whole application, and let's start getting going on the dashboard itself. So next thing that we're going to do is get the current size of the current directory. So fortunately this is pretty easy. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to go to our getStats method, and we're going to want to use it to actually change this data into a data frame, because we're going to use that for all of our dashboarding. That'll be more convenient than using the current list that we have for our data. So let's convert this into a data frame. So first thing we're going to do is import pandas. And then we'll again call the data frame as a global state. And the reason we're going to using all these global states is because we want to be able to pull these in on load, which I'll show you later whenever we do our plots. So let's define our data frame as the data frame made up of the data. And let's name our columns. So we'll name them path, file size, and extension. And then we'll have to say that df is global. So now that we have that, let's create a new function that's going to be called getTheSize. It'll take no parameters, and it'll return a string. So for the size, we just want to return the size of the, we'll take the data frame we just created, get the file size series, and then sum it. And then now we'll just format the size for if the file size, if the directory size is in bytes, kilobytes, megabytes, or gigabytes, to present it in a acceptable manner to the user. And then finally we'll return the size. And then we'll need to add the size to our context. So now that we have that done, let's create a new template for the directory size. So go back to our dashboard.main, and then we're going to put this on a new new column of our grid spec. And then we'll need to create a new template for the directory size. And then on this new directory, we'll just include a few pieces of information. We'll list the user what the current directory is. And then we'll list the directory size. And then let's go back and ensure to include that back on our dashboard. And now let's go back to our website and see if we can reload it. And as we can see, we get it. We get the current directory and the directory size, but let's add a little bit of padding here to make it align a little bit longer, better with our menu down here. And then now we can see we get our margin here to look correctly. And so that's it for the getting the directory size. So the next thing we'll want to do is we want to get a pie chart that shows what's taking up the most memory by file extension. So we'll do that next. So to create our pie chart, we're going to make a new route on our app.py file. So we're going to call it at app.get, and this is going to be called /pie chart. And we're going to call our function here getPie. Now this is again going to return a template response, so we need to include a request as a parameter. Now for our pie chart, we could have hundreds of extensions within a directory. So just to keep our pie chart from being absolutely cluttered with just like tons and tons of file extensions, we're just going to actually just take the top 10 extensions and then use that. So actually we'll go back and use another parameter, which we'll call the amount, which will be an integer, and by default we'll give it 10. We won't use this for our dashboard, but this will be here if you want to modify the dashboard to let the users pick how many they want to see in their top amount. So to get the top 10, first what we need to do is determine what the top 10 is. So we're going to have to do a little bit of data manipulation with our query, with our data frame. So we'll take our data frame and let's group it by the extension. And then we want to get the, we want to sort it by the file size. So we'll do file size.sum. And then by default, this won't be sorted, so let's go and sort the values. And then we only want to get the top 10 amount, so we'll just do a head method. And then for the integer, we'll just type in the amount. And then we're just going to want to get the index, which is just going to be the extensions. And then for lookup, we'll convert this into a set. And we'll assign this a variable called top 10. So now we have a set with our top 10. We need to create a new column in our original data frame. So we'll call this new column top 10. And the easiest way I think to do this is just use the eval method. So this eval will just return a true or false. And then whenever we're using the eval, if we want to refer to a variable that's within our local scope, we have to use this ampersand symbol. So you say at op10, at op10, which will refer to this variable. So after we've assigned that, let's create our plot.df. And the first thing we'll do is we need to reassign the extension, where basically if it's not in the top 10, we're going to give it a extension of other. And then to do this if else with pandas, the easiest way is to use numpy. So let's import numpy. And then we'll say numpy.where. So this is like equivalent to an if else statement in numpy. And let's just say x.top10, which refers to our current data frame. So if it is in the top 10, just keep the extension. And if not, use other. So then after we have that, we need to go back and another do a group by again. And again, we'll group it by the extension. And then do the same thing that we did up above, file size.sum. And then let's reset the index. So this will be our plot.df. And so now we need to create our figure. And so to do that, we're going to import Plotly. So let's go up to our top. And we're going to import Plotly plot.express as px. And then we also need to import plotly.io, and we'll do that as pio. And so now once we're on here, we can go back and create our new figure. So we'll say our figure is equal to px.pi, and then we'll give it our plot df as the data. For the names, we're going to say is equal to extension. And then for the values, we're going to give it our file size. For context, we'll give it an empty context. And we'll say on our context, it's going to be equal to pie chart. And we're going to say pio dot to HTML. And we want to give this our figure that we just created. And full HTML is going to be equal to false. And then now we'll need to return our template response. And this will return our template response. And so now we need to go through and create a new template called piechart.html. So let's go ahead and do that. So on our pie chart, what we first want to do is we're going to first go do and make a div, and it's going to have some HTMX properties. So it's going to be hx-get, and it's going to refer to that path we just called. So it's going to be to, let's see, what did we call it? So we need to go to pie chart. So / pie chart. And now we want to trigger it whenever we load this page. And then we want to do an hx swap on outer. So that's how we do that. And then what we're going to do is check first if there is a pie chart. So we'll say if pie chart. We're going to do something. Otherwise, if we don't have a pie chart, that means we need to go and load it. So we're going to do this portion if we don't have the pie chart. Okay, so now that we have that, let's make the actual template for our pie chart. So I'm going to wrap this in a div. And then I'm going to give it a title. And we'll just give it a title, memory usage by file extension. And then we need to include the pie chart. And so for our pie chart, we need to use this pipe symbol /safe. And the reason we have to use safe is because we're basically injecting HTML, which typically you don't want to do, especially if the HTML is coming from a user uploaded, because that's how you can get cross-scripting security attacks. But in this case, we know our HTML is getting generated by our Plotly, so we'll mark it down as safe, that it is okay to just render the raw HTML that we're putting inside the context. And so now we just need to add this to our dashboard. And so we'll just include it after our dir size. So piechart.html. And now let's go back to our website and see if we can reload the page, what happens. We got an error. And let's see. And we messed up our template. So let's go back to our template here. So we need to put a %time here. And let's try that again. And we see we get our pie chart to show up. And so it looks like it's showing the extensions that we have. So that's our pie chart. And we can see now if we click on a subdirectory here, it'll still keep working. And so then the last thing we want to do is we want to put another chart on here for our top 10 bad actors. So that'll be the last one. It'll just be a bad actors chart that we can see what's the biggest files. So to add the bad actors or bar plot, we'll add a new root, app.get, and this is going to be called bad actors. So we'll say / bad actors. Define get bad. And so like the last route that we made, this is going to take a request so we can return a template response. And then also like the request, we're going to allow the amount, which is an integer. And we give it a default of 10. That way the user can change it. For this demonstration though, nothing will be done with this. We'll just do the default to 10. And so for this one, we want to take our data frame and just pull out the top 10 files by file size. So that's pretty easy. So we'll say plot df, and then we'll say df.sortValues, and then we want to sort it by file size. Ascending is equal to true. And then we'll get the head, and again with just the amount. And so now that we have the plot df, let's create our figure. So we do px, and we'll do a bar plot, so bar. And we'll give it our plot df. For the x, we're going to give it the path. And then for the y, we're going to give it the file size. Now, the file size, so the path is going to be quite long. So just to make that look a little bit better, we're going to rotate it. So we're going to do fig.update x-axis. And we're going to do a tick angle equal to -45. And then we're going to return a context. And on our context, we're going to make it a dictionary, and we're going to give it the or bad actors chart. And we'll give it a, we'll do PIO, again, .toHTML. And we'll give it, again, we're going to give it the figure, and full HTML is going to be equal to false. And this full HTML just returns an entire standalone HTML document. And in this case, we only want to return just a partial of it. And so now we need to return our template response, pass it the request, and then we're going to give this a template name of badactors.html, and then again we'll pass it the context. And that's all we needed on this one. So now we just need to create this badactors.html. So let's do that. We'll go to our templates and create a badactors.html. And then let's go into it. And this is going to be semantically pretty similar to the last one we just made. So I'm just going to go and copy what we already have for our pie chart. And so instead of if pie chart, we're going to change this to if bad actors chart. Then we're going to render our bad actors. So we're going to say in this tag, this is just our bad actors. And then on here, we're going to say our bad actors chart. And again, we're going to keep it safe. Otherwise, we want to go to what we just had, which is our /bad actors. And then we can leave the rest of this the same. Now let's add it to our dashboard. And we can go and reload our page. And let's see if it reloads. So we can see it reloaded, but we have not really what we expected here. So let's go back and go back to our chart here. And this is actually supposed to be false, not true. And so now let's do that. And we'll do a tick angle of 45 instead of -45. And let's refresh that. And here we can see we get a bar chart. Like I said, probably we need to clean up these file paths, but at least now we can kind of see what's going on here. And we can go to different ones. So we can go to our simple social that we did on another video and profile what the biggest files are. And here we can see it's pointing to a bunch of images that we uploaded on that project. So, yep, that's basically the project. So that wraps up this video. I hope you found it informative, and this is something that you can use as you're developing in Python. I think this is a good combination for making dashboards if you have some sort of advanced application where you need something more than just what you can set up a dash or Streamlit for quick prototyping. So if you're doing this involved in a larger application, you can set it up this way. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you liked, please leave a comment, leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Thank you. Bye.